Good morning, everybody. Can I ask you to take your seats? Can I ask you to please take your seats? Going once. Thank you. I'm Christian Escoven, the president of the Coronado Roundtable, and I'd like to welcome all of you to another very special program this morning. So before we start, I'd like to ask you to stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As you know, our programs are recorded for Zoom. So we'd like to thank the library for continuing to provide that service, and Sean Briley, the director. And we have Selena Villadolid doing the honors this morning. Thank you, Selena. That's a very important service for the Roundtable and the community of Coronado. So thank you very much. But in that regard, for those viewing at home, please mute your computer or device, and please turn off your camera. You may use your chat box for the question and answer portion of the program. The recording should be available later today or whenever we get the announcement from the library. And our coffee service this morning is provided from the library's coffee cart, the Amalo Brew. So please help yourself to coffee. In that regard, as long as we've been providing coffee, we've asked for a $2 donation. So that's been years and years. Starting next month, we'd like to ask for a $3 donation, considering our increased costs. So please, next month, $3 donation if you can. I'm sorry to announce that we have lost, with the passing of Jerry Winter, a very stalwart member, a regular attendee, and a past Coronado board member. Jerry Winter, rest in peace. But on a much happier note, we have a very special program this morning, which our own board member, Dave Bean, will introduce. So please, Dave.
Well, good morning, everybody. Let me echo Christian's comments and thanks for coming today. It's great to see a full house. I know it has nothing to do with me, but everything to do with our guest, who really needs little introduction, judging by the number of people that he already knows in the room. It has been my pleasure to know John for, 20, 25 years probably. And I was very pleased that when he agreed to come and speak with us. And of course, he brought his lovely wife, Teresa, with him as well. So we're very pleased to have him here. Vice Admiral John Christensen, United States Navy retired, is the son of a Navy A-1 pilot and a Navy nurse. He attended Crown and Sacred Heart schools and is a 1981 graduate of some school at on the Severn River in Annapolis, Maryland. You may have heard of it. He's a career surface warfare officer and commanded the USS McCluskey Destroyer Squadron 21, the Surface Warfare Officer School, the Navy's Mine Warfare Command, the Enterprise Strike Group, and the U.S. Naval War College. He served as Chief of Staff of the U.S. European Command in Stuttgart, Germany, and concluded his career as a U.S. military representative to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, also known as NATO. Vice Admiral Christensen is married to a Coronado native, Teresa, and is a proud father of 3 grown children. His daughter, who is a brand new nurse, just starting her career as a nurse in Philadelphia. His son, one son who is a Coast Guardsman and just made first class, I understand, and is doing great things down in the Caribbean. And his other son, Matt, who is a naval officer, just returned from his first deployment. And I think with just a very little bit of prodding, John might be able to tell you a little bit about what happened during his deployment, which was pretty exciting. If you have not asked John where his atlas is, make sure you ask him where his atlas is. That's one pregnant memory I have, is reporting to SWO school and sitting down with him. And of course, we knew each other already. And he said, "Now, where was it you grew up?" And he pulls out this giant Rand McNally atlas and opens it up, and there's markings all over it. And it turns out that virtually every person he meets, he pulls that atlas out. And I don't know, you probably still have it on your shelf at home, and finds out, where your hometown is, and makes a little mark and a little notation of, when he met you and where you came from. So that's my little anecdote about Vice Admiral Christensen. John, it's a great pleasure to introduce you and to have you here. Ladies and gentlemen, Admiral Christensen.
Good morning. Great to be here. Real honor, very intimidating. Teresa told me I couldn't go through and tell stories about all the people I know because that would take an hour. Going to shoot for 45 minutes and then questions and answers. Going to kind of be all over the map. You asked me, Dave asked me to talk about America's role in a growing NATO. And so I said I didn't have any slides, but library says squared away here. I felt like should use something. So we asked for a globe and just a world map. But the 6 big topics, we're going to talk about love and reading, geography and money, family and war. So I usually start things. There's several people here have heard me read this before. There might be a prize, but I always start this out. 25 years ago this year, I wrote this when I was a commanding officer of the McCluskey here in San Diego. And it just represents the way I feel in general about the blessings in my life. I love the Navy. I've been to 42 countries, rescued Vietnamese refugees from certain death on the high seas, felt the heat on my face from Iraqi oil well fires in Kuwait, had the deck as an A-7 Corsair II hit the back of a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier at night, 500 yards in front of me, evaded at least 5 typhoons, been inoculated for anthrax, been educated at Annapolis, Newport, Fletcher, and Harvard, driven across country 11 times, 11 different routes. I drive good, safe cars. My children go to great schools. I fully fund my IRA every year. I own a home, have money in the bank, stock market, and my wallet. My parents are proud of me. My high school classmates can't believe I command a U.S. Navy warship. I've had so many euphoric homecomings with my family after being at sea that I'm addicted to it. My dad was a dirt poor farm boy, grandson of immigrants. The Navy gave him everything he has, and everything I have in this world, the Navy gave me. I love the Navy. So, so that's kind of the first thing I want to talk about is love. And, it's true. I love the Navy. I loved the 41 years I spent in a uniform representing all of you. This room is full of naval heroes, old bosses, former bosses, shipmates, friends. But it really has been an incredible life. And I love my country. And that was probably the greatest thing about serving at NATO was the opportunity for Teresa and I. We spent the last almost 6 years of our time in uniform in Europe. And there's no place like home. I mean, I love the world, and America's role, to answer that first part of the question, our role is to lead, and we do. And I know if you watch too much TV or you, I don't know, there seems to be kind of a negative vibe out there that I hope in the next 40 minutes, I will dispel a little bit and raise your level of optimism about how life is, how it really is out there around the world, and what America's role is in addressing those challenges we all feel. So second thing I said I was going to talk about was reading, and we're here in the library, so what better place? I got a bunch of quotes sprinkled through my remarks here from some of my heroes. One of my heroes, rest in peace, Rack Taylor, an old admiral, tough guy. And he used to always say, watch out for people who read. They'll beat you every time. And I think it's true. When I come across people who are kind of down on America or our future or politics or whatever, I say, you're probably watching too much TV. I said, read a book. I used to tell commanding officers when they would go, if you're having a bad day in command, whether it's of a squadron or a ship, read a book. You'll realize it's never been better. Read any history book, go back to any decade in our country's history and take a look at that decade and say, what were the challenges? And we've always had challenges and we've always overcome them. So big on reading and big on what it can do to improve your mood. So this library is wonderful. Our daughter was just out here celebrating the end of her nursing school and just said, boy, Dad, that library is amazing. And it's just packed. But that's really the antidote for any kind of negative feeling you have about the course that our country's on. Okay, NATO, they said it, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, kind of interesting. April of this year is its 75th anniversary. And the title said a growing NATO. So we started with 12 nations in 1949. We now have 31, about to get 32. There's a lot of, just did something wrong. I don't need that. Yeah, if you can fix it, great. Sorry. You can see why I don't use slides. Oh, yeah. There it is.
There you go.
Okay, I usually give this talk to midshipmen at the Naval Academy. Every spring and fall, I go over to the political science classes and just talk about NATO and alliances. And you're a much more intimidating audience, although the midshipmen, again, will give you hope for the future when it comes to patriotism and working hard and not getting enough sleep, but ready to engage and talk. I usually just bring a globe, and I like to take my hand. Oh, I got to stay at the mic. It's hard for me. I'm a walker. I usually take my hand on a globe and put my hand over North America and Europe. Now, this is distorted because it's a Mercator projection. Really, as you know, South America is 9 times the size of Greenland. It doesn't look like it there. But if you take a real globe, you can put your hand over North America and Northern Europe. The Earth is this big, and your hand can cover up 51% of the global economy. That's another thing I've been hearing about. China's going to overtake us. Just like growing up here, they say we're going to run out of drinking water by the year 2000. Well, we've solved that problem, and we've been hearing about China going to overtake us, their economy. Well, the EU is number 2, and China is number 3, and the US is number 1. And if you add the US and China together, that's over half of the global economy, which is really amazing for such a small part of the world. What's amazing is, more amazing than the economic power of that small piece of the world, is what connects us across that ocean is our values. And that's another reason for optimism, is that's what links us. The things that are required to be in NATO, to stay in NATO, a commitment to democracy, a commitment to individual human rights, and a commitment to the rule of law. And so that's what it takes to get into the club. I listened to Charlie Martolio's his professorial, it's graduate level stuff. I'm like a preacher. Charlie's a professor, I'm a preacher. But he talks about, are we gonna cooperate? Are we gonna compete? Or are we gonna conflict? And so that's what's out there, kind of the range of things to do. But between North America and Europe, between the United States and our NATO allies, the values tie us together. Why did NATO come about 75 years ago? Well, we killed 100 million of our fellow human beings in the century before. 100 million people died violently through war and repressive regimes, whether it was Stalin or Mao or whatever. We were killing each other, a much smaller world, killing each other at a huge rate. And we thought we could do better. and we are doing better, but that's what NATO did. NATO said, we're going to band together. We're going to try to end war. Now, even in this room of people who are probably retired once, some of us have retired twice, most of us have forgotten global war, total war. You know, it's my great grandparents that lost children. My mom's oldest brother was killed on a submarine in the Sea of Japan. My dad's oldest brother was wounded in Europe in the army. But our children certainly don't know what global war is. The level of conflict, that 100 million people killed, that's history. That's in the past. We're doing so much better. So what's the reason for NATO's success in preventing total war, which I think it has? I mean, we always tell ourselves the most successful military alliance in the history of the world. It really is. I think the thing that I said earlier, what's our role in that? America's role is to lead. You know, I grew up in Coronado. I guess I lived here 66 to 70 was the first period. Padres were a new team. They built the bridge, the Chargers. And then, so what do I, as a San Diego kid, I never won a Super Bowl. I never won a World Series. Navy's never won a national championship. I never knew what it felt like to win it all. Some of you maybe came from places that won it all in sports. I never did. But when I got to be the mill rep in Brussels and sit behind the American flag at that big round table, I felt like I represented the Patriots and the Yankees and fill in the blank. With our aircraft carriers and our Army and the way our government is admired, the way you're treated when you're in the US military in Brussels, we lead that alliance, and we are critical to its success. So what's the structure of that? That's how it feels to be there. But the thing that I observed firsthand is the way that the processes of NATO link the leadership of this country, the president, the Secretary of State, foreign ministers, most of the world call them, the Secretary of Defense, the way those people are chairman of our Joint Chiefs of Staff, the way they are forced on a regular basis to engage and immerse themselves in the issues of Europe. You know, there's a library full of books about why we got sucked into World War I. Why did we get sucked into World War II? We're trying to avoid that. We're trying to avoid the repeated conflict breaks out in some other part of the world, and it's American economic vitality and leadership and our Constitution and our willingness to sacrifice for others that brings us back into that. But the process of NATO and what I observed and was part of is, you know, I talked about sitting behind the big round table, and I hope I'm not talking down anybody that knows this. I'm used to talking to midshipmen, so, but you know, there's two main teams there in Brussels. There's the political team, the North Atlantic Council, and that's represented, you know, they've got the 31, they use name tags for the politicians. You know, military guys, we like ribbons and flags. We use flags on the military committee. But when the round table, the North Atlantic Council meets, they've got the name tags with the country on one side in English, the other side's in French, two official languages. And when they meet daily, and those are represented, the United States is represented by an ambassador. The ambassadors, when I was there, was Doug Lute. He was a West Point graduate who was the war czar for President Bush and President Obama. And then we had a change in administration, and we got Kay Bailey Hutchison, who was a senator from Texas. And they led the political part of NATO. And NATO is really unique as an organization in that it's both political and military. On the military side, we're led by the mill rep, which was the role I filled for those 3 wonderful years. I represented the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who for my entire tour was General Joe Dunford, the Marine, fantastic guy. But I sat behind that American flag unless he was in town. So the process that takes place is on a daily basis, there are meetings at the political level with the North Atlantic Council, and the same table, clear the room, bring in the guys in uniform. When it's the military committee, change the name tags to flags, we're representing our chairman. But the real people show up on a regular basis. So starting at the top, the President of the United States goes to a NATO summit at a minimum every other year. And in my experience, and even to this day with the conflicts that have been going on, it's more often the president's there at least once a year. So what does that look like? Okay, the president comes and he sits at the same table in the same chair. I don't know if the president, he probably has a flag and a name tag, but they sit at the same table and he is the United States. You know, when a president goes aboard a warship, United States arriving, you know, he represents the country. So, but what that requires, when that president flies over an Air Force One, the biggest, most beautiful waxed 747 you ever saw, he's doing homework the whole flight over. He's Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State, they're briefing him. What are all the issues that connect the United States to Europe? Without that process, the president is really busy. All of us are really busy, but that meeting on a really annual basis forces him to get briefs and say, okay, what are all the issues between America and Europe, basically? I mean, you know, again, I don't want to talk down, but it's United States, Canada, Iceland, France, Germany, go across. Most of Europe is in NATO. So that's every other year. The next level down, again, we're a political military alliance. So we have the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense. The Secretary of State, Foreign Minister, they meet twice a year. Twice a year, a big Boeing 767 light blue, it looks like Air Force One and smaller. The Secretary of State is studying all the issues and he sits down and he meets all his counterparts from Europe and they talk about what matters, what connects us. Secretary of Defense comes 3 times a year. 3 times a year, he flies over, sits behind that flag, and they talk about the issues that connect the US military to the militaries of the fellow allies in NATO. And then 3 times a year, the Chief of Defense comes, our chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So you got 3, 6, 8, 9 meetings of the 3 most critical parts of the executive branch of our country, flying across the ocean, studying, 2 or 3 nights of parties and meetings and decisions, and then all the way back. And so that repeated process really, really connects us and keeps us engaged. So when issues come up that do matter to as we continue to prevent global war, which we've done successfully for 75 years, of course there's conflict. It's just part of human nature. But NATO has really, in my opinion, with American leadership, NATO has put a lid on that, and our problems are much, of course, if you lose a child, it's the end of the world. But the 100 million scale violence, we've largely addressed. Geography and money. Those are 2 other topics. I love geography. You can tell I got the map up there. This country is so blessed by our geography. I mean, I'm a Navy guy, but you don't need a map or a globe to know that we've got the Atlantic Ocean on one side and the Pacific Ocean on the other. And we've got the 2 world's best neighbors, Canada to the north and Mexico to the south. Our blessings for our neighbors and our oceans that protect us and give us kind of freedom to maneuver and to prosper and to raise our families and love our lives is truly it's unbelievable. But with that, broke my chain of thought there. The geography of it leads to the possibility that what often rears its head in our country is isolationism. You know, we're tired of reading about how it's America's fault and we're not doing enough or we're doing too much. Or the other big theory you come across a lot is that Americans love war. You know, every war out there is America's involved in. You know, we love to kill. It's just not true. Human nature, in my opinion, I would often say, you know, families can't. How many of you have a perfect family where husband, wife, and children are perfect? You know, there's that Chinese proverb, no family can hang the sign that says, no problems here. If you got a family, you got problems. Okay, how about town? I mean, I remember I read a book, The 7 Nations of North America. One of the chapters started, Ronald Reagan believed that the finest weather in the world was Coronado, California. There's a book that says that Ronald Reagan said, this is But even in Coronado, you can't get along. I mean, you got the bike lane issue, you got the, I don't see about the bike. No, so families, cities, states can't get along. The United States, we're all polarized right now. Why would you expect that as you build on these ever more complex organizations made up of people who can't get along, that you would have conflict? It's part of human nature. And I can't get religious, although I did go to Sacred Heart, and my dad taught there, and I got married there. And I am very Catholic. I believe there's a man upstairs, there's a woman upstairs, somebody upstairs that we got to appeal to. And I think our country has been blessed. So I'll depart from the religious, the preaching part. But America's role in a growing NATO. That's an issue. How big should NATO be? Well, you have to, the Washington Treaty that established NATO, 1949, geography matters. You got to be somehow connected to the Atlantic or North America or Europe. That's kind of the rules of admission. There's talk in there about the Tropic of Cancer, islands north of the Tropic of Cancer. But we've gotten pretty big. We're at 31 countries right now. Who knows what the 32nd is about to be? Sweden, yeah. See, I knew that this crowd didn't need any kind of 101 of this. It was really interesting sitting around that big round table. It's alphabetical. Albania, and I remember FG, France, Germany, directly across from my line of sight. It was always fun looking at the French and the Germans talking. It was all your fault, and coming around. And then it went Turkey, United Kingdom, United States, and then nothing to my left. So I love the British. I mean, let's face it, those guys, no one gives a speech like the British. So we'd make these called interventions, and the British mill rep, Lieutenant General Norton, who used to command the Queen's Guard and the big horse riding next to the Queen. Now he's sitting next to me at the meeting talking about this and that with a cool accent. I always said, I know why they named the language after you. I mean, he was just so good. But then I would sit there, and again, feeling like I was the Yankees and the Patriots rolled into one, because, they used to often put up a picture of an aircraft carrier and look at me and say, we ever going to see one of these again, John? It's like, hey, that brings me to a point. Europe wanting us to do more. Where are those carriers you're always talking about? One thing that spanned, without getting political, again, I came in with President Obama and I left with President Trump. So those are two very different types of people, but they had the same message, really. When you get down to it, they both were telling Europe, you got to do more. I don't know the numbers. We're a $22 trillion GDP. The EU's 20 trillion. And the EU and the NATO, they're not perfect. There's a Venn diagram, but they're 90% of the EU countries are NATO and vice versa. And the big ones are. But you got to do more. President Obama did it very smoothly, closed door. Trump came in there like a linebacker, like a guy that wasn't a politician, and said, hey, you're not paying your dues, and you can nitpick about the words, but the message was the same. Europe, you're rich too. 20 trillion, 22 trillion, we're talking about the same. If we want to keep this value-based global order, individual human rights, democracy, the rule of law, our team, again, Charlie said it so brilliantly in his brief, is it going to be authoritarianism and state-controlled economy, or is it going to be democracy and every individual matters? And, but it's messy. I get back to family. I said I was going to talk about family. Democracy is messy. If you want easy, again, another great quote from Rack Taylor. I was his aide back when, where is Steve Clary? When Steve Clary was dead on 20, he said, John, there's the right way and the wrong way, and the right way usually ain't the easy way. And I think that kind of comes to when it comes to governments. Democracy is messy, it's loud, we've got all this change, it's not orderly, we've got problems in our cities, we've got all kinds of issues for us to solve. But like a family, it's worth it. And, the greatest system in the world, except, democracy is the worst system in the world, except compared to all the others. It's loud and it's messy, but it's worth it. And so talking about the 32nd country, when I used to sit there at the end of the alphabet with nobody to my left, we would often invite Finland and Sweden because, you know, I mean, their position up there, they said I had a pointer here. Again, you guys, Finland has a long border with Russia. Sweden has no border. But Norway has a border up there. But anyway, Finland and Sweden were not part of NATO. And so when they were in Brussels, they had full teams. They just weren't part of the alliance. And I would always tease them. They would kind of feel bad about, hey, John, you know, we know we're not in NATO. They don't get to go to all the meetings. I said, I think it's great you guys aren't in NATO. I love that your country's self-determination. You don't want to be part of NATO? You don't have to be part of NATO. And that's what we stand for. We're not going to make every one of our neighbors be like us. And we're not going to go around and say everyone has to be like us. That's your right. I love the fact that you can't rely on our aircraft carriers. And you can't rely on our NSA to spy on you. And you can't rely on our space satellites. That you got to build all that yourself. I think that's great. That makes you guys have to do all that investment. And we know you're our friends. And let's face it, if there's a big war, we're going to be there for you, most likely. And so anyway, I used to love teasing them. But, you know, when reality set in and history repeats itself, or at least rhymes, and Russia started moving out, there they were, like, okay, we're ready to join now. And so it really is a good thing, I think, that growth. And we can get in the questions about whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, NATO's growth. It's no decision's easy, but again, in our system of government, the way the founding fathers, their genius of how this country was founded, we'll talk about it, we'll argue about it, we'll hopefully not come to blows with each other, although we've done it before. When it really mattered, some things are worth fighting for. So that'll go on. Family, war. Finally, I was president of the War College. Great preparation to go to NATO was to be the president of the Naval War College. And that's another one of my favorite quotes on reading. When I had been a student at the War College, and of course, naval officers, we're a fun group. You know, we work hard, we play hard, we drink, we travel, we we like our lives. It's a good life. And so when you get orders to go back to Newport for a year to read 1,000 pages a week and write papers, you know, everybody says, oh, you're going to love Newport, man. The food, the weather's not great, but the food and the reading, it's only hard if you do it. And and so I was just, the timing for me was lucky. I had just gotten married to Teresa here in Coronado. We were pregnant with our first child, Grace. And so here, Teresa's 6 months pregnant. So I'm like, I guess I got the time to read. So I read every word. And when I came back to be the president, however many years later, the faculty, I had them in my hand when I said, you know, they say the reading's only hard if you do it. Well, I read every word and it changed me forever. I don't watch the news the same. I don't react to bad news, critical thinking. Everything about my life got better when I went to the Naval War College for 1 year and read what I was told to read. And it, so yeah, for the library, are you the head librarian? No. But if you take anything out of here, I want you to take out that, you know, we got a great country founded by inspirational, insightful people who are trying to make the world a better place. And I think they did a fabulous job. Got about 10 minutes here, a couple sea stories about what it was like to be there. The transition, Teresa and I remember it well when we had that election and President Obama was leaving and President Trump was coming in. And for us in the military, we prided ourselves in not our issue, not our problem. Our job is to carry out the orders. You know, we take an oath to a constitution, not to an individual. And but the place to put it in it was kind of freaking out. You know, I don't know if they were watching too much TV and not reading enough history, but I took on as my role to convince my fellow mil reps that we're going to be fine. Let me explain how America works. We got 3 co-equal branches of government, and you're all freaked out about 1/3 of them. Okay, that 1/3 of them is going to be there for 4 years, maybe 8, but at most 8. And he might not even get through, you know, the president doesn't get through 4 years. If he tries to do something illegal, the judicial branch stops him. If he tries to spend money he's not authorized to spend, he doesn't get the money. So relax. It's going to be exciting. And, you know, he hasn't been in politics, but it was fun explaining to my fellow mill reps the fact that this country, because of its design, is incredibly resilient. I mean, we're powered by, for those of you who probably feel a little bit like, okay, everyone here was in the Navy. I wasn't in the Navy. Well, if you weren't in the Navy and you were out there in what I call the real world, having to make real money, God bless you, because it's your success and risk and prosperity that makes it possible for the rest of for America to do what it does around the world. So anyway, yeah, we went to church that Sunday. You know, it was the English speaking church there in Brussels, and both the priests were Irish. And I'm serious, they were crying. They were so freaked out that because I think what they watched on TV, that they thought that America was going to all of a sudden go into a closet and come out a whole different country. And I said, you know, they were, because a lot of them remembered World War II, and they just thought that the wheels were going to come off the cart. Well, I mean, we all have our opinions about how it went, how it's going. But again, I think my prescription is to read more and don't watch TV. If you want to evaluate how the country's doing, do what I do quite often, usually with one of our children, drive across country, just meet Americans. Well, I mean, and I got to tell you, Coronado, a pretty special place. Talking to each other's kind of a distorted view of the world. It's pretty perfect here. But if you drive across country, even go into the inner city, our daughter Grace just graduated University of Pennsylvania. The week she graduated was when they were in the crosshairs. I mean, there was news crews all over the campus for their recent their president's testimony. And but even in a city like Philadelphia or New York, you know, and our cities no doubt have issues, but they still have incredible art and vitality, and the nutcrackers playing and the Christmas market. You never get that feeling watched on TV. You watch TV and you think, you know, and again, not to get political, but one of the things I learned at the Naval War College, one of our blessings as a country is our demographics. China's biggest curse is their demographics. They had this one-child policy. So you know what a demographic profile, they got like over 1 billion people that are old, and they got like no people that are young that are about to start having to support that 1 billion of people. And you don't have to scratch very deep to find most people telling you that China has a very dim future because they don't have the resilient, messy, debate every decision that we have in this country. And they said, hey, let's just say you can only have one baby. Well, that results in less than one baby. They got problems. And if you look at all the major economies of the world and lay out all of our demographic profiles, the number of old, middle, young babies, we have the best demographic profile in the world. And why is that? What's the one-word answer to America's blessings of demography? Who said immigration? It's immigration. Now, I think we won't debate legal or illegal immigration, but immigration, that's what we're founded on. You know, my little love the Navy thing, my dad was grandson of immigrants. Most of us here weren't here 5,000 years ago. We're a country of immigrants. Anyway, all right, I think that's all the points I had there. You're going to take it away. Collective defense. I didn't get into the articles of NATO. You know, the famous one is Article 5. Jeff Pack, what's Article 5 of NATO?
Attack on one is an attack on all.
I knew I could trust the smartest man in the room. Yeah, Jeff's the man. That's the one we're kind of famous for. It's kind of a distortion. Attack on one is attack on all. Really, an attack on one means everybody else is going to do whatever they deem they are able to do and want to do and agree to do. Because remember, we are not China. You don't have to do everything the way we say it. We want you to sign up and say you believe in democracy and individual human rights and the rule of law. But at the end of the day, every country gets to do it their way. So anyway, let's see, wrapping this up. I had one more quick anecdote. Finland, Germany. Oh, the articles, Jeff Pack. Article 5 says if attack on one is attack on all. And that really, at the end of the day, that's going to happen. You wonder why Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia Where's that pointer? There are three little tiny countries right there in the Baltic that used to be part of the Soviet Union. There's a little tiny piece of Russia right there called Kaliningrad, which is very interesting. But those three countries, I tell you what, if they weren't in NATO, I will bet you everything I own, they would make Western Ukraine look like, like I mean, they'd have got sucked up right away. But they're part of NATO. They're in the club. And they're not, and they don't want to go back. Trust me, they love being in NATO, and they're in the club. So that Article 5 is important. There's other articles that matter a lot. One of my favorite is the self-help article. It says that every country has a responsibility to do everything in their power to basically defend themselves, to be like a pre-NATO Finland or Sweden. It's not just, oh, hey, we're in NATO, America will do all the work. No, if you're Latvia, you got to think about space, cyber, the air, the sea, the land. You got to think about all parts of your defense. And if you can defend yourself, and all 31, soon to be 32 allies can defend themselves, then we really are collective defense. That's the buzzword, collective defense. All right, couple of minutes, wrap it up here. One of my favorite quotes coming out of NATO was General Mattis when he was Secretary of Defense. He was extremely popular, and he really calmed the herd when they really thought that America had, oh my gosh, they're going to abandon NATO. And then you got General Mattis coming in there, and the room just fell silent. And when he talked, because he was a Marine 4-star general, and he loves his country. And what's the other thing we've been talking about? He loves to read. You want to be his friend, ask him what the last book he read was. But General Mattis came in there, and he looked, again, same message President Obama had, same message President Trump had. Hey, Europe, you got to do more. And the way General Mattis put it is, you cannot continue to expect the American people to care more about your children's future than you do. In other words, we are spending a lot of money and carrying this burden of being NATO. You've got to do more. So that was a quote that really hit home. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up here, coming up on time 4-5. The quote I want to end with, that's a C story. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff before General Dunford was Marty Dempsey, a West Point graduate, but a great guy, Irishman, and he loved this country like all of you do. And he was trying to get in good with the students at the Naval War College. So he told us how cool he thought aircraft carriers were, which was, so he comes in and he says, so I'm the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and they take me to the Middle East where we have all these issues. And they say, we're going to fly it to an aircraft carrier operating in the middle of the Arabian Gulf. And he's a historian too, and he loves his history. And they fly him out, and they put a life preserver on him and hearing protection. And those of you who haven't been on the deck of an operating aircraft carrier, I don't know if it's the volume or the heat or the youth, the age of the sailors moving these aircraft around to inches of the edge of the flight deck, and just slightly older people than that flying the aircraft. And it is just like, and then you tell yourself, we're on the opposite side of the earth from America. And this thing, it's just incredible. So General Dempsey, he's an Army guy, he's Army, Navy, we don't need a Navy, but he gets out and he sees all these greasy young Americans, sweat pouring down, chains, these jets maneuvering, and he's on the Abraham Lincoln, and he's kind of out of his environment. You get out of a helicopter, it's a natural to crouch down. And so he's crouching down and he's walking across the flight deck, and he looks up on the island of the Abraham Lincoln, and he just sees 3 words. Anybody know what they were? It's from the Gettysburg Address. Shall not perish. Dave Bean, well done. So shall not perish. And, the last line, Lincoln goes to Gettysburg, where again, some things are worth fighting for, but the Civil War was, you think the wheels are coming off the cart of America? Read a book about the Civil War. Read about Andersonville Prison. These are Americans. I mean, it's just, we are doing just okay. Keep praying, keep reading. But anyway, and Lincoln's question was, did all these people die in vain? You know, is this experiment of a government by the people? I mean, this isn't something, you know, the history of political philosophy and political science of letting everybody get a vote and every individual matters. No, we're used to, like, you know, there's people that matter and the rest of you don't matter. But we were an experiment, and the question was, will it long survive? Shall not perish. So anyway, I love General Dempsey's admiration for the Navy. I know Amy Bauerschmidt spoke. She was CO of the Abraham Lincoln, another great ship. Okay, I think I'm gonna wrap it up there. See if I get any other quotes here. I didn't talk about just war theory. That's one of my favorite things I studied when I got to spend that year at the Fletcher School where Jeff went. You know, when's it okay to kill your fellow man? That's probably another topic you guys would love to talk about. And it's something that America has wrestled with. You know, when is it okay to kill when is fighting okay? When is it the right answer? And to the extent that we've tried to do that, we try to only fight just wars. We usually do a pretty good job. So I think I'm gonna wrap it up there. Again, I hope you walk out here thinking I'm gonna read more and watch less TV. I'm going to have faith in our country's future, and I'm going to realize how blessed I am to live in Coronado. Thank you.